Hello, 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 and welcome back to another edition of Fan Talk, your favorite podcast by your favorite fan. That is me, Kyle Brenchley, in the house on this Thursday. Welcome to Fan Talk. Fan Talk is a podcast by the fans for the fans. I know you're a fan because this is the place to be. Fan Talk's a podcast that you can find anywhere you get your podcasts. We are talking college football today and probably for the rest of our lives. We're so excited. We are 9 days away from week 0 of college football being back here. It's such an exciting time. So if you're new here, welcome. Sign, posters, everything that you need, we have it here at Fan Talk. If you're watching on YouTube or Spotify, please consider liking the show, leaving a review, subscribing if you like what you hear, and let's jump right in. This is part 3 of the series that I've been doing. I've been previewing the top 25. I went week 1, we did teams 1 through 5. Week 2, we did teams 6 through 10. And this week we'll be doing the local teams. Now, I am from Utah. So when I mean local teams, we're talking BYU, we're talking Utah, and we're talking Utah State, which is the school I went to. I am alumni of Utah State University. So we will be sure to mention them. BYU and Utah both being ranked in the top 25. Now, when I first started this series, they had a different poll to rank the teams. They've now updated that poll. A few of the teams switched, but it's pretty much the same. BYU coming in at 14, Utah at 21, and then Utah State is not ranked. No surprises there. Let's start off with BYU because they're ranked the highest. We're going to take a look at how they did last season. What's their expectations for this season, and any thoughts, feelings, revelations that we get along the way. BYU had a really good season last year. They went 12-2, and here's their schedule from last year. Their only losses were to Texas Tech. Now, if you remember, Texas Tech was a top 5 team last year. And as a matter of fact, they were ranked 4 when they faced off against the Cougars in the Big 12 championship. This is a Texas Tech team that was very, very good. A Texas Tech team that, of course, made the college football playoff. This was the only team BYU lost to. They lost to them twice on the road and then at a neutral site. And both times they lost by quite a few points. They lost by at least 3 or 4 scores in both games. But other than that, they took care of business. They went 11-2 in the regular season, won their bowl game, the Pop-Tarts Bowl against Georgia Tech, and will finish 12-2. Unfortunately, they were just left off the list and did not get let in to the college football playoff, much to the chagrin of a lot of Cougars fans everywhere. That was 2025. This year, their expectations are now, we will make the college football playoff. We will get in. We will fight for a Big 12 championship. And their schedule is very helpful in them getting there because they don't have to play Texas Tech this year. As a matter of fact, neither them or Utah have to play Texas Tech, which is very interesting. We talked about Texas Tech earlier. They have a very manageable schedule. So what does BYU need to do? They don't need to worry about Texas Tech. They only need to control what they can control. And this is what they can control. This is their schedule. At home against Arizona is the first game that pops out to me. Arizona is a good team, not a great team. Last year, that Arizona BYU game was fantastic down in Tucson. So that should be a fun one. Take care of business there. They have an Iowa State game at home. The late game on ESPN. Now, Iowa State, of course, they no longer have Rocco Beck. They don't have their head coach, Coach Campbell, anymore. They both went to Penn State, right? So Iowa State is a new program, has a new look, and has some new players. So it should be interesting to see how Iowa State does. They could still be very good. It could still be a very good game. That's the second game I'm looking out for. The third game is the most obvious when number 4 Notre Dame comes to Provo to play. Tickets are as low as $547. I've seen tickets as high as like World Cup prices, like $10,000 to go see Notre Dame and BYU. Who's paying $10,000? I mean, nobody is, but that's what people are trying to sell their tickets for on the resale market. It's absolutely crazy. But that is the game of their year. At home against Notre Dame. This is a marquee win. Now, of course, if Notre Dame turns out to have a terrible season, it doesn't look as good, but Notre Dame is ranked 4 and should be very good, and a win against them will only boost them even bigger into the college football playoff talks. The next game I see, of course, is the Holy War at Utah. This one will be a fun matchup, especially if they're both ranked. going into this matchup. It's towards the end of the season in November, and both these teams, they're fighting for a spot in the Big 12 championship. And we know the way that the college football playoff works. It's very likely that the Big 12 champion will go, of course, and maybe one other team from the Big 12, but it's not a guarantee. We know that the SEC and the Big 10, they get a lot of respect and they get a lot of teams into the college football playoff. We saw last year a 3-loss Alabama team got in over this BYU team that only lost 2 games. Same with Utah. They only lost 2 games as well. They were overlooked because neither of them were conference champions. Alabama wasn't either, but the committee thought, a 3-loss Alabama team is better than a 2-loss BYU team, a 2-loss Utah team. Again, that's something they can't control. All they can control is go out, win your games. If you can win a Big 12 championship, you're in for sure, but leave no doubt. So that game at Utah will be fantastic, a huge game for both programs. Can you imagine if both programs are undefeated and they go into this game? Wow. Or even better, let's raise the stakes even higher. Both teams have 1 loss. And this game pretty much determines which team gets into the college football playoff and which team sits out. Because as we saw last year, 2 losses in the Big 12 with both these programs does not get you into the college football playoff. And then a few more games, of course, Cincinnati, Kansas, Baylor to finish out the year. But I'd say those 4 games, at home against Arizona, at home against Iowa State, at home against Notre Dame, on the road at Utah, pretty much a home game, honestly, because Provo and Salt Lake is like 40 miles apart. So this is a pretty favorable schedule for the Cougars, honestly. Like, it could have been a lot worse. They could have had to travel to Notre Dame. They could have had to travel to Iowa State. They could have had to travel to Arizona or Arizona State. So this is pretty favorable. I think BYU has a very good shot of shaking up the college football world and making their first college football playoff. Again, it's probably going to have to be they have to win the Big 12, right? They don't play Texas Tech. They do meet Texas Tech in the Big 12 championship game. They have a shot to take them out, but that's probably going to be the path forward, in my opinion. But we'll have to see. It's the beginning of the season. It's hard to say at the beginning of the season where a team will be at the very end. It's, a team that we haven't even seen play on the field. Of course, their quarterback returns, their coach returns, but their wide receiver room's totally different. They still have LJ Martin, who's arguably one of the best running backs in the country. He's back for his senior season. So this is a good team. So watch out for the BYU Cougars. Let me know what you guys think down below. What are your expectations for them? What are you looking forward to most with the BYU Cougars? Currently ranked 14th. They opened the season against Utah Tech on Saturday, September 5th. All right, let's move on to the University of Utah. The University of Utah coming in at number 21. Still ranked. They had a pretty good season last year, as I mentioned before. Only 2 losses. Their 2 losses came to one, Texas Tech, who just beat everybody, and then at BYU. So they were pretty much the 3rd place team in the Big 12, right? Their 2 losses coming to number 1 and number 2, but did not get in because they did not make the Big 12 championship game. They had a couple ranked wins, but their 2 good, solid games were losses, right? Against worthy opponents were losses. And so ultimately they did not make the cut. 3-loss Alabama team gets in over Utah. Utah was below BYU. They were below, I think Vanderbilt actually had 3 losses. They were below Texas. So they were kind of, it was going to be a long shot for Utah to make it anyways last year. But a good season last year. Nonetheless, Devin Dampier, their quarterback, came in, showed that he has potential, can do some good things. But that was last year. And this is now. And there's been quite a lot of shakeup with the Utah Utes in this last year. Let's first start with the fact that their Coach Kyle Whittingham, who had been the coach for years, for like 20 years, he steps down and takes the job at Michigan. So he's no longer their head coach. They have a new coach in Morgan Scalley, who's been coaching with the Utes for the last few seasons as an assistant coach. He is now at the helm. They have Devin Dampier returning. They have a couple of players returning, a couple new players. This is a team that's going to look different, right? They had Coach Kyle Whittingham for years. And now that they have a new head coach for the first time in 20 years, it's crazy. We don't know what to expect. Of course, the AP poll says that they're ranked 21, so there's expectations that they'll still be good, they'll still be competitive. we look at their schedule in 2026, and they have some opportunities to prove that. They have an SEC opponent in Arkansas. That game is at home in Salt Lake City, but an SEC opponent nonetheless should help out their schedule unless Arkansas goes on to be 2-10 like they were last year. They had the battle of the brothers at home against Utah State. Now we don't know how well Utah State will play. They're probably not a team that's really in the conversation as a competitive opponent, but still a fun game there, a game that they cannot mess up, a rivalry game. Could go either way in rivalry games. You never know. That's a game they have to stay focused for. At Iowa State, that'll be a hard one. At home against Houston. Houston is ranked. I don't know much about Houston, honestly. We'll have to see how Houston plays, if they're ranked throughout the season or if this is just a preliminary thing. And then I'm looking at home against BYU. That's probably their toughest game on the schedule. That is a game that will make or break their season, especially if they go into that game with one loss already. And then road games against TCU and Arizona, those are games that you definitely don't need to sleep on. You have to take seriously. And then finishing the season at home against West Virginia. So honestly, these are games that they probably should win. But again, this is a Utah Utes team with a new head coach. A lot of expectations, but we just really haven't seen this new product on the field. So it's easy for us to say, well, last year they were good and in the past they've been good. So they'll probably, only lose, 1 or 2 games this year. But we don't really know what we're getting. We have an idea, but it's one thing to know, or it's one thing to say we have an idea of what we're going to get and have expectations and have dreams and have aspirations that this is what we're going to see. It's another thing to actually see that on the field. So that's why, personally, it's hard for me to go out and say, oh, I know what's going to happen, or I'm confident in what's going to happen, right? I make these predictions based on what I know, what I've seen in the past, what I've expected from watching college football year after year. But the landscape of college football is totally changed. Year to year, you might get a different product. And so this Utah Utes team is a team that will have to go out and show it to me, because I really don't know what to expect. Again, same with BYU. I think their best path is probably to win the conference. If they don't win the conference and have 2 losses like they did last year, that's not a good place to be. Now, if they have only 1 loss, now that shakes up the conversation a little bit. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. The Utah Utes open on Thursday, September 3rd against Idaho at home. We'll see the Morgan Scalley era in action. All right, now that we've got the 2 ranked teams out of the way, let's move our focus to Utah State. Now, you're probably like, why are you talking about Utah State on a podcast? Nobody has ever talked about Utah State football on a podcast, but I'm doing it because we're covering the local schools, and this is where I went to school. This is where I got my bachelor's degree, from Utah State. Utah State, solid basketball program. If you've been watching college basketball the last few years, they are competitive every year. They've won a couple Mountain West championships. They've made March Madness tournament a few times. Now, football, it's a little different story, but they have Bronco Mendenhall as their head coach, a very good veteran coach who's coached at BYU, Virginia, amongst other places. He's coming to Logan. This is a team that last year went 6-6. That's kind of the expectations every year, to at least make a bowl game, right? Like, we're not out here to make the college football playoff by any means. We're not out here to win the Mountain West championship, which they did a couple years ago. But they're no longer in the Mountain West. They are now in the Pac-12, They are now in the Pac-12, and that's a good sign. That is a sign of progress. That Utah State is a program that wants to compete, that wants to get better. Now, the Pac-12 is not what it used to be, but it's been revamped. And so it is going to be fun to see how that happens, how that goes. Last year, went 6-7. They lost the Potato Bowl, famous Idaho Potato Bowl. But they played some really good teams. They played 2 SEC teams. A pretty tough schedule last year, honestly, like non-conference schedule. They had to play at Texas A&M and at Vanderbilt. But that's how you get exposure. That's how you get seen on TV, right? Go get beat up by some SEC teams. And honestly, they put up some points. They hung 35 on Vanderbilt. Yeah, they gave up 55, but they scored 35 points. They scored 5 touchdowns against Vanderbilt. A&M, they lost by 22 points, but they scored 22 points. They didn't lose, 58-0 like that. You sometimes see that happen. But so that's fantastic for them. the rest of these games, Mountain West opponents, nothing to hang your hat on. Lost to Boise again, lost to UNLV again. So a pretty typical year for Utah State going 6-6. Let's look at 2026. What do they have in the docket this year? They do have a few ranked opponents. Of course, they have the battle of the brothers, right, against Utah. That'll be a fun game. That is the third week of the season. They travel to Washington. They have a Big Ten matchup. Washington's ranked this year, and Washington should be pretty good. So those are their two big competitive games. They have to play Boise State on the road. Those are probably their top three games. Of course, they have Oregon State and San Diego State on the schedule later on in the season. But honestly, this looks like potentially another 6-6 year. Let's be real. If they can get a ranked win over Washington or Utah, that'd be huge, of course. But both games on the road, that Boise State game's on the road. That's kind of a hard road schedule. You also have to go to San Diego State and Oregon State. So this could be a very tough year for the Aggies. They have some new players on their roster, right? Bryson Barnes is no longer there. So they have a couple new guys that are stepping in and doing their thing. So it should be very interesting to see how this Utah State team does. Nobody's really paying attention to them unless you're like a true diehard Aggies fan, which I know plenty of those, right? True-blooded Aggie. But I'm excited. I'm excited for this new college football season. I think there's a lot of high expectations for BYU and Utah. BYU, high expectations. Utah, we don't know what to expect. Utah State, we know what to expect, but maybe they could surprise us. That's how I would define these three teams. BYU, high expectations. The bar is high. Make college football playoff or bust. Utah, we don't know what we're going to get. Are we going to get the same Utah team we've seen that's been competitive, that has competed for Big 12 championships, Pac-12 championships in the past? Or are we going to see a team that kind of struggles coming out of the gates with a new head coach and new players? And then Utah State, we know what we're going to get. We're going to get at least 6-6. Can we be surprised? Can they win a few more games? Can they take a step forward now being in the Pac-12? We will see. All right, guys, that will be the end of this series looking at the top 10 teams plus the local teams. Thank you guys for tuning in. We are 9 days away from college football. Next week, I will be out of town, so I don't know if an episode will be pushed out, but for sure, after week 0 and leading into week 1, we'll be smashing this college football. We'll be taking it head on, and it's going to be fun the next few months. So buckle up, get ready. It's going to be great. Again, thank you so much for tuning into Fan Talk. Fan Talk's a podcast that you can find anywhere you get your podcast. I upload on YouTube and Spotify if you prefer the video versions. I know a lot of people like to watch. A lot of people just like to listen. So I'm anywhere you get your podcast, Apple, Amazon, iHeartRadio, you name it. I appreciate you guys tuning in. And if you guys liked this video, if you like this podcast, please leave a review or leave a like on the video. Consider subscribing if you're on YouTube. And I'll see you guys next week for another edition of Fan